It's not uncommon for science fiction stories to have dystopian futures as a setting, and more often than not, these fictional futures are presented as the envisioned result of non-fictional problems we have in the present. Take a classic example like Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, released in 1932. Huxley wrote that book as a response to humanity's increasing technological ingenuity. He believed that while it would produce a more productive, peaceful, and increasingly painless society, the preservation of that harmony would come with great expense. That prosperity would make newer generations more sensitive to stress. For example, in Brave New World, true artistic expression is not allowed because it could upset the mental stability of others. This is why Shakespearean plays like Othello are banned in this Brave New World. Even though the world controller, Mustafa Mond, recognizes that Othello is greater than any art produced in the present, censoring Othello is the price we have to pay for stability. You've got to choose between happiness and what people used to call high art. Is such a society desirable in that circumstance? Well, I think most people watching this video would say no. However, depending on the difficulty of the problem, the number of people saying yes will increase. How about the issue of online misinformation? One piece of modern dystopian fiction that tackles this issue is a video game called Metal Gear Solid 2, released in 2001. The villain in that game says that the problem of online misinformation is impossible for humans to fix, and that the only thing that can be done to fix it is to create an AI, one that regulates what information human beings see or don't see, all for the purpose of creating what the AI refers to as societal sanity, stability, happiness. While I and many others find such an idea appalling because it limits human freedom, you would be surprised to see how many people find the idea appealing, which I think is mainly because the issue of misinformation at present is so threatening. If you don't believe me, look at the comment section for my most popular video on Metal Gear Solid 2. We rely on works of fiction like Metal Gear or Brave New World to warn us with these hypothetical dystopias and utopias, so that we can stop those who would will them into existence in the present. However, whether it is due to the time they are released in or the focus of their stories, they do not always provide a complete picture of the struggle we are facing in the present moment. If I were to pick a work of fiction that paints the most compelling and most likely form of a negative utopia at present, it would have to be Psycho-Pass. This anime depicts a future that combines the most realistic elements from all the classic fictional utopias. Like Brave New World, the future in Psycho-Pass is one where technology has allowed the majority to live a relatively painless existence. Like Metal Gear, it is one where information is controlled by AI. Beyond that, it incorporates the relevant elements from other classic works of dystopian fiction like Deus Ex, Minority Report, Ready Player One, and Ghost in the Shell. But what elevates Psycho-Pass beyond these and other works of utopian fiction is the governing force behind the dystopia, that being the Sibyl system. Compared to other technological overlords, the Sibyl system has a greater sophistication to it that makes it borderline infallible. Not only that, there's a certain pseudo-realism to it, one that makes the idea of its replication in our reality terrifying. Today, I want to discuss the brilliance of the Sibyl system, the circumstances that permitted its invention, and how those circumstances mirror our society today. Before I do, I will note that there are spoilers ahead. If you have not watched Psycho-Pass, I highly recommend you do. Aside from Monster, it might be my favorite anime of all time. I'm also inclined to say that episode 20 of season 1 might contain the most profound moment in the history of anime, though I refuse to officially make that declaration due to my relative lack of knowledge of the medium. If you want to figure out how to watch Psycho-Pass, I will leave directions in the description box below. First, let us review what led to the creation of Sybil. In the year 2020, there was a global economic collapse. Food and water shortages were ubiquitous. Demonstrations and riots were constantly being fostered by online forums, and the influx of refugees to developed countries provoked various civil wars. The Japanese had a unique response to this global strife. In 2031, they introduced national vocational aptitude exams, carried out by the recently introduced cymatic scan technology. This would allow the Japanese government to achieve borderline zero unemployment simply by scanning a human being and determining their employment potential. After 20 years of this program, relative stability was achieved by the Japanese, but relative stability wasn't enough. The dream of full stability and full self-reliance was achieved in 2061 when the Sybil AI was born. For all intents and purposes, Sybil is God. It was responsible for ensuring continued full employment by making sure every Japanese citizen had a job that they were suited for. It helped ensure that they were 100% self-sufficient when it came to food, with no shortages and no starvation. Most importantly, though, it brought about Psycho-Pass technology. This allowed Sybil to determine a person's mental stability via cymatic scan. This not only helped them prevent most crime before it happened, a la Minority Report, but also helped the mentally unstable seek mental health care. Like in Deus Ex, humankind had birthed a god that would realize truly omnipresent observation and judgment. A god that would look after all of their needs, allowing them to live a happy and mostly stress-free life. On the surface, the Sybil system sounds like a success. The secularist dream of heaven on earth seemed to be achieved. However, as with all dystopian or quote-unquote utopian societies, they harbor a dark secret. The question that almost nobody seems to ask in the Psycho-Pass universe is how Sybil functions. How do the cymatic scans determine a person's ideal job, or their mental instability? How do we know that it never gets anything wrong? The answer comes in Season 1, Episode 17. The Sybil system is a hive mind of 200 plus human brains, a collective consciousness, if you will. But these brains are not just any average human brain. They are the brains of those who provided the biggest threat to Sybil's hegemony. In Psycho-Pass, there are individuals who are ungovernable by Sybil's systems. No matter how sophisticated Sybil gets at determining a person's potential for employment or criminality, there will always be anomalies. A good way of thinking about these types of people is to compare them to Neo from The Matrix. Neo was the sum of all anomalies in the Matrix dream world. It was because he was an anomaly that he posed the greatest threat to the machines. The anomalies in Psycho-Pass are basically the same thing, albeit without the superpowers. It is in the interest of the Sybil system to co-opt these people's brains, but not simply to eliminate the threat. Rather, by having those brains interact with each other within the Sybil system, it can become more efficient with its totalitarian rule. It can anticipate hypothetical anomalies that pose a threat to their rule. Even though anomalies will always exist that will threaten Sybil, Sybil can always get better at preventing them. Now let's put aside for a second the likelihood that these brains were taken without the consent of their previous owners. Let's say a system like Sybil could be created by consenting people. Is that something desirable? We have already outlined the solutions Sybil provides for issues like employment, crime prevention, mental health support, and the availability of food. But there are many others. It provides solutions for issues that we are currently struggling with in the real world. There's the increased sensitivity to stress and anxiety in young people compared to previous generations. There is the deluge of fake news and misinformation via the internet. There's the loss of faith in religion, which, for some people, leads to existential depression. Sybil addresses all of these things. So, what is the issue here? When people say they perform good actions to create a better world, is this not what we aim for? Is it not Sybil? To some, particularly the type of people who agree with the AI from Metal Gear Solid 2, this is the ultimate ideal. But for people like myself, including the creators of Psycho-Pass, we recognize that no AI system can fully accommodate the chaotic, irrational side of human nature. Recall what I said before about Brave New World and the creation of transgressive art. The very same philosophical debate takes place in episodes 6 and 7 of Season 1. An artist named Roichi Oryo once produced famous works of art that depict dismembered bodies. He did this to symbolize the contradictory nature of the self, which I can only imagine refers to the rational and irrational sides of every human soul. His art was banned under Sybil because it elevated people's stress. When his life's purpose was taken away from him, he did everything he could to numb the pain, which was perfectly easy to do in Sybil's society. What he did not anticipate, however, is that these numbing methods would put him into an immobile, somewhat comatose state. This is the result of what the anime refers to as eustress deficiency. Eustress, also known as good stress, is the type of stress that motivates healthy, productive action. If we don't have a constant supply of eustress, we risk becoming like Roichi, who was unable to cope with any form of stress. Therefore, he eliminated it from his life entirely, but by doing this, there was nothing to motivate any action. So, he would just sit or lie in place. Though this state could accurately be described as serene and painless, it would also be accurate to call it lifeless. Human beings need expressions of chaos and irrationality within and without in order to balance the order. After all, chaos is the birthplace of creativity. Otherwise, there is nothing to motivate action, and thus no reason to live. Unless we voluntarily take on stress, be it the characters in Psycho-Pass or the new generations in reality, our prosperity will continue to turn more people away from life, choosing a serene but lifeless state. Now, the person who realizes this most in the Psycho-Pass anime, oddly enough, is the villain, Shogo Makishima. He wishes to destroy Sybil so that the creative, chaotic, and irrational side of humanity can find full expression once again. Unlike most other criminals who are noticed early on via Psycho-Pass scans, Makishima's brain is immune to these scans, making him one of the anomalies the Sybil system wishes to co-opt. Having said all this, it might seem weird to refer to Makishima as the villain. I must admit, I, to an extent, agree with Makishima's militancy against Sybil, and it has to do with one core reason. As Makishima outlines in episode 11 of season 1, human decisions can only be classified as moral if they are carried out by one's unadulterated will, by one's choice. Living under the Sybil system makes this almost impossible, because almost every human is living an unconscious existence fostered by their puppet master. This unconsciousness renders designations like good and evil meaningless, because human action is only truly moral if it's done via their conscious choice. Until Sybil is destroyed, human action can never be free and thus moral. So of course I sympathize with Makishima in this regard. However, just because his goal is noble does not mean that his methods of attaining it are as well. To Makishima, the ends justify the means. He will instigate riots, murder people, and threaten the food supply, all to bring Sybil down. Some might say that Sybil's grip is too strong, and that this is the only way to succeed. and Makishima might be the last person that can overcome Sybil. I can understand that. However, it is my opinion that while Makishima's argument for Chaos's right to exist is sound, the amount of chaos he wishes to perpetuate is equal in size to the amount of order that Sybil bestows on society. While both chaos and order have their benefits, too much of either is ultimately detrimental. While Sybil's order guarantees happiness, it limits human freedom and healthy stress. While Makishima's chaos guarantees human freedom and healthy stress, it doesn't promote any stability. So the question is, what is the solution? The anime hints at this in a very subtle way. I picked up on this during episode 16, when Makishima confronts the character Kogami, who fights on behalf of Sybil. Note how Makishima has white hair and wears a white shirt, and Kogami has black hair and wears a black blazer. This is sort of an ironic representation of the Chinese yin-yang symbol. White, or yang, represents order, which is symbolized by the chaotic Makishima. Black, or yin, represents chaos, which is symbolized by Kogami, fighting on behalf of Sybil's tyrannical order. In this moment, I realized what the anime was trying to say. Both these men represent the positives and negatives of both chaos and order. Neither alone will bring about the most desirable world. That will only be brought about with balance. This is something that I think the main character Akane realizes in the last 3 episodes. She comes to hate the Sybil system that she, Kogami, and the other policemen and women had been fighting on behalf of. However, she realizes that the order Sybil provides does have its benefits, and it is too entrenched into society for it to be ripped out in the way that Makishima would like. Even though she might feel emotionally driven to destroy the Sybil system when she finds out its true nature, she realizes she can't. Instead, she needs to straddle the line between chaos and order. The Sybil system will need to be removed, but carefully. The chaotic side of human nature will need to be fostered, but carefully. Only then will humanity truly be saved. This is a message that is quite timely. If we are not careful, problems like misinformation, increasing levels of mental illness, and others could lead to a totalitarian solution like Sybil. These problems might seem like they are impossible to solve, but dealing with them morally in the here and now will prevent an even deeper problem from manifesting in the future. And I believe we do that by aiming at the same prescription that Psycho-Pass provides: the balance between chaos and order. There are other aspects of Psycho-Pass that I would be interested in talking about. The anime invokes the names of many philosophers like Rousseau, Bentham, and Pascal, as well as classic texts like 1984 and Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. If you guys want to see a video delving into those sources and how they reflect the reality of Psycho-Pass, please let me know in the comment section below. If you liked this video, please give it a like. Also, if you want to help ensure the continued production of these types of analysis videos, please consider supporting me on Patreon or joining my YouTube members section. I will leave a link to both of those, as well as other options, in the description box below. Thanks guys, and until next time, I want to remind you as always and as per usual,
Spooky boogie, spooky boogie, spooky boogie,
Spooky boogie, spooky boogie, spooky boogie, spooky boogie, spooky boogie, spooky boogie, spooky boogie, spooky boogie,
spooky boogie,
spooky boogie, spooky boogie, spooky boogie, spooky boogie, spooky boogie.